All right. Good day, everybody. Happy 2023. This will be the first video that I'm putting out in the new year. So I wanted to start this year's video series with an updated statement of intent. I've touched on the topics of truth and suffering directly and indirectly throughout the course of this video. And the more that I'm thinking about them and discussing them with other people and thinking about them on my own, I really am fascinated by the interplay of these two seemingly distinct experiences, ideas, concepts, what have you, and how interconnected they are, and how it's actually really difficult to understand how one affects the other. And I've come to I've updated some of my beliefs and I've refined some of my understandings, what I believe to be my understandings on the topics, and I wanted to share them with you in hopes that I can more accurately pursue the niche and the intent of this channel, as I'm still figuring it out and receiving feedback from those of you that watch it, and I do appreciate that. The first of which is suffering. So kind of tease out some of the details, maybe a way that I haven't before. And suffering and physical, emotional pain. So the experience of pain, as the definition of enduring a suffering of some kind, it seems to be a universal human characteristic, and it's undisputable in that you don't have to necessarily logically comprehend it. You don't necessarily have to be able to explain it to others. It is just something that we all experience. Turmoil, anguish, pain, fear, all of those, I guess you would call them typically negative experiences associated with negative emotions. There's something that human beings all have in common, and something that is commonplace without us being able to necessarily describe it adequately in words. Indicates to me a measure of undisputable truth, or undisputable nature of objective reality and objective truth, which again is something that, as a premise, I believe is a real thing, despite our inability oftentimes to be able to even articulate or to understand or to perceive what that truth is. Suffering is, I think, a fundamental tool to be able to recognize it, despite those inadequacies we may have collectively or as individuals. It is there. It's something tangible. It's real. And how we go about finding that outside of suffering really becomes challenging. If you put your hand on a hot stove and your neurons start firing and telling you that you're burning, your muscular tissue, your skin is burning, it's really hard to refute the experience of that in any sort of heady, logical way. And you'll look at your hand afterwards and you'll see the effects of such a burn, and it is. That's all I can say about it. It is, and there's nothing more that needs to be said about that, or really can be said about that. So when we talk about the indication of truth, I think suffering is such a beautiful example of really our initial trail marker for that truth, that we're on the right path to finding it, if we can at least start there, use that as a starting point. And then about the nature of truth itself, I've really spent a lot of time, the last year especially, trying to tease out the source or the origin of such truth. And it is my humble opinion that truth, that objective truth, comes from one source, and I would call that one source God. Now, I want to define and refine an understanding of what God is, because I think a lot of people in our modern society will hear that and turn themselves off because they associate the concept of God with perhaps a certain religious sect, maybe a outdated concept of a higher being in the clouds that has certain rules that if we don't follow, we irritate, and if we do, we find ourselves in the good graces. And I think some of that perhaps is true, probably is true, but I think that woefully falls short of our understanding of what God is. So to dismiss him based on some of those what would I say? Insufficient descriptions of such a powerful entity, being, force, however you want to describe it, I think is is a mistake. And I think we miss out on really understanding the world around us and ourselves when we throw out the concept of such a higher being that we've classically called God for the last few thousand years, or gods prior to that. Um, one thing I've been thinking about when it comes to God, and why I think why there's such a trepidation about accepting the existence of such a being, is because we as people, in our attempt to understand the world around us, we confine things to the languages that we use, and to our understanding of them, to the language we use to communicate the understanding that we have of such things. Well, if God, by definition, is an omnipotent and infinite being, meaning that his being, his life source, the, the central ethos of God is boundless, cannot be bounded. So anytime we attempt to bound with our words and our understanding, we as finite, much fallible, mortal beings, we necessarily fail. It's a logical conclusion. We're punching above our weight when we're attempting to really describe in terms that we can understand what a being such as God is. So of course we fail as religions or as spiritual people. We fail to understand or to communicate what that being really is. Now, just because we fail to, and oftentimes misapply our understanding of such a being, does not negate the existence of such a being. How could it? If something is so powerful, how could us messing up in terms of understanding and communicating, relaying, and acting out what it is we think the correct truth is coming from such a being, we are going to fail. That now the question is, why even try? And I think because and this is again as a humble opinion that I attempt to try to tease out into sufficient words where maybe this can inspire some reflection upon the listeners or watchers of this channel, is that the more we find ourselves in tune with the rhythm of that, with the understanding of that, the true understanding of that, the more I think we tap into an abundance mindset or lifestyle, abundance of spiritual, emotional, physical well-being that, of course, because of the nature that I spoke about earlier, I'm unable right now to articulate any words. Some might define it as heavenly. That will do. I don't have a better word for it, so that will do. That will be sufficient for now. But the possibility of walking in that truth seems to me to be a far better alternative than walking in untruth, which I've spoken before, we can deceive ourselves about our own internal abilities to create our own truth. And while we are capable of shaping the environment around us, it seems to me that our ability to create such a powerful thing as truth is we are woefully lacking in such an ability, and therefore it would behoove us to find some level of humility, to look for truth outside of ourselves, in order to go along with the water itself. When you're swimming out in the ocean is much more powerful than you, and you will tire yourself quickly if you try to fight against the current of the ocean. Whereas swimming with the current of the ocean and using that power will be much more advantageous to you in the long run. So a little bit more of my 2023 ramblings. I'll try to be a little bit more entertaining and not so boring to watch this year as I try to explore some of these extremely significant topics and discuss with people who might have a lens to that greater truth than I'm able to conjure up on my own accord. So happy 2023. I wish you guys the best in the upcoming year, whatever it is you decide to pursue. And I hope to see you soon. Take care.